All right, so what I want to talk to you guys about real quick is streams of consciousness. So when you tap into certain streams of consciousness, you'll notice that everything that you have in this reality, everything that you see out in the world that's created, that inspires awe in you, you'll notice that whoever created that was tapped into a higher stream of consciousness. So what does it actually mean to be tapped into a higher stream of consciousness? The first thing that I'll talk about is inspiration, is drawing inspiration from otherworldly sources. So if you're tapped into a stream of consciousness, a mindset, a philosophy that gives you access to a higher state of being, a higher awareness, then essentially what you're doing is you're transcending the 3D matrix and accessing creative energy from the God force, creative energy from another world or another dimension. The reason that I'm bringing this up is because the average person out there is locked in on the 3D stream of consciousness, which means they're locked in only on what they can see. They're locked in on the reality that's in front of them, and they typically only think in terms of a science-based approach to life or matter, what they can see, what's physical, what's real. That's the only thing that's real to most people, right? But if you walk into like a really beautiful church, for example, like these cathedrals and these unbelievably extravagant buildings that have been built throughout history, think about what it takes for somebody to actually bring that into existence in physical form. It takes someone tapped into a higher stream of consciousness. It takes being tapped into, in a sense, like a godly or divine stream of consciousness that allows you to transcend the physical world. It allows you to transcend the physical mind, and it gives you access to those higher creative forces. And the reason I think this is important is no matter what you want to create in your life, if there's a product or a goal or an outcome that you want to create with whatever you're doing, in order to get an extraordinary result, you have to break through the 3D consciousness into higher streams of consciousness. And the way that this works, in a sense, is that when you have inspiration, when you get inspiration, your mind kind of breaks out of the box, right? You hear people talk about think outside of the box. Well, what does it mean to think outside of the box? First, you have to understand what the box is. The box is your physical mind. And to think outside of it means for your spirit or your consciousness essentially to break out of that 3D matrix and access higher realms of consciousness. To me, what that means is accessing God consciousness or accessing divine inspiration. The word inspiration actually means, if you look at the definition, the word inspiration means, in a sense, to be in spirit. So when you're in spirit, when you're in the spirit of higher consciousness, when you're in the spirit of God, or you're in the spirit of divine inspiration, this is the place where your mind starts to access creative thoughts, creative ideas that are outside the box, because it's outside of the realm of physical reality. If you think only in terms of what's in the here and now in the physical reality, you can build something that's functional. But to build something that's really great, or to create something that's really great, or to create an outcome in your life that's really great, you really have to break out of the conventional ways of thinking. And so a good analogy for this is if you think about China, right? Like China mass produces all these products. Like you go to a Walmart or you order stuff on Amazon. There's all these functional products that are really basic and functional. They're really thought of and designed and engineered from the perspective of the 3D, of the matrix, of the physical world only. They're not really excellent products. I'm sure, yes, there are some good manufacturers or engineers or designers, but for the most part, a lot of what you see is just basic, functional, 3D matrix mind thinking, in a sense, type products that are useful, functional, cheap, and there's nothing really extraordinary about them. But when you see a really amazingly designed product like a Mercedes-Benz or a Ferrari, for example, if we're talking cars, the level of creativity, the level of detail, the level of quality is inspired, in a sense, by a higher stream of consciousness. In my opinion, it takes somebody to visualize and understand and bring this idea, this creative energy, this creative force down into the physical world and start to mold it and make something that's real and tangible and inspiring and next level. And that's kind of like a good analogy for legendary, right? If you want to create something that's legendary, you have to tap into a higher stream of consciousness. You have to break through convention. And look, if you're somebody who is living a life and is uninspired, you have some sort of depression, or you're in a job you don't like, or you're in a situation that's adverse to you in some sense, if you look at it from the stream of consciousness of only the matrix and the 3D and the actual physical reality of the situation, you're probably going to feel stuck, right? And if you feel stuck in a situation, in life, on a goal, on a pursuit, whatever it is, if you feel stuck, chances are you're only looking at it or thinking about it from that 3D perspective, from the physical world, real world perspective, right? But, this begs the question, right? What is the real world? Without going down that rabbit hole, when you and I and everybody comes together, we have this consensus reality. This is essentially what they call in quantum physics the field. And the field is kind of like a consensus reality of the physical world, and there's certain basic agreements that exist. And so if you're somebody who's stuck in a problem or a situation or something in life that causes you to feel like you're stuck, you're not living the life that you should be living, you're not accomplishing the goals that you should be accomplishing, I can almost guarantee you that the cause of that stuckness is being tapped into a lower stream of consciousness, or being tapped into the matrix, which is essentially the consensus 3D reality physical world that appears to be a block to your dreams, a block to the reality that you want to create, or a block to the goal that you want to accomplish. And so to get out of that, to become somebody who achieves a lot of things, who has a lot of these breakthroughs, who is able to bring a vision to life, that's going to take you breaking out of the 3D matrix box, or the mental paradigm that is the shared mental paradigm, and tapping into a higher stream of consciousness and transcending those lower streams of consciousness, finding inspiration, tapping into divine energy, or essentially the God mind, or your higher self, or your soul awareness, or that whatever name that you want to call it, it's essentially a higher stream of consciousness. And once you tap into that, it gives you a vision and allows you to see things that maybe might not yet exist, but it gives you the ability to have a vision, right? In the Bible it says, without vision my people perish. So in a sense, what it's talking about is tap into those higher streams of consciousness, have a vision, and now no matter what's here in the 3D, you can start to access the higher stream of consciousness and build and create that in the physical world. And that's where you see people who create things that are extraordinary, or you see a product or a person or somebody who performs or operates in their business a certain way that's absolutely extraordinary, and it's hard to understand what does that person have that's different from everybody else. And essentially what it is that they're just tapped into a higher stream of consciousness, and that could mean a lot of different things. But I'm just, I'm saying this from a very general perspective of being tapped into a higher mode of thought, higher intelligence, higher creativity. It's not a debate whether or not it's divine intelligence or, something of that sort. But the reality is that we have access to higher creative forces within the mind or beyond the mind. And we're all living in this world, and we are tapped into streams of consciousness all the time. We're tapped into all sorts of different streams of consciousness. And the thing about social media, right, you're tapped into, if you're scrolling on social media, you're just mass consuming a variety of streams of consciousness. And it's putting ideas in your mind. It's causing you to think a certain way. And it actually causes a lot of confusion. This is where the dopamine burnout comes from. The hormonal imbalances and things that we see like that's rampant is because people are consuming and exploring all these different vast streams of consciousness without actually sticking to one that's good for what they're looking to create or good for their life, right? The reason that I bring this up is because no matter what you're focused on, you're tapping into a stream of consciousness. If you're consuming entertainment, music, a TV show, whatever it is, you're tapping into that stream of consciousness. And if you're a passive observer, passively programming your mind without your subconscious mind, without your awareness, just by watching a TV show, you are being subconsciously implanted with ideas and thoughts, and that actually changes or structures the way that you think, whether or not you're aware of it. And so when I say tap into a higher stream of consciousness, it's starting to break away those paradigms and starts to break away the box or the constriction or the constrictive ways of thinking that prevent you from accessing higher states of being, higher states of inspiration, higher states of consciousness, and actually accessing creativity that will transcend your existing ability and physical capability in the here and now. And that's what's going to give you the ability to start doing things and creating things and having breakthroughs in your goals, whatever it is that you're trying to do, whatever it is you're trying to accomplish. In order to start achieving at a high level, you have to be tapped into these higher streams of consciousness, and you have to use that as a way to elevate your state above the average. And when you have an above average state of mind, a mindset, and you're tapped into higher streams of consciousness, you can pretty much mold reality the way that you want, in a sense of whatever you want to create, whatever goals you're after, you just have to focus on the outcome and focus on the vision, focus on the design and crafting the vision the way that you want to achieve the outcome. And the way that you accomplish it can happen in so many different ways. It becomes less important. So what becomes more important is being tapped into that vision and tapped into a higher stream of consciousness and actually looking at the characteristics of your mental design, your vision. I had this thought because, I've talked to a lot of people, and they would say like they're in this situation, they feel stuck, or they're not getting the results that they want. And I thought, well, the only way that somebody could really stay stuck is that they are trapped in some sort of paradigm and they're not accessing higher streams of consciousness, and they're not of the existing paradigm for some reason. And and so the other thing to consider is that what is the message of the of the modern day 3D physical world, right? It's like, what messaging is being sent? And so if you start to look at the messaging, there is a lot of propaganda and programming and media. When your stream of consciousness is blocked from accessing those higher states, is that you tend to look only in the real world, the physical world, the 3D world, and you start to see the situations that you're in or the experiences that are not ideal to you as sort of a block to getting to your goal. And in order to break out of that, just like I described earlier, you have to start auditing your paradigms, auditing your belief systems, and getting past this idea that what's here physically is the only way to access creative thought. Your creative thought, God in a sense, or accessing higher streams of consciousness, the way that I would put it in a sense is a kind of divine power, is being able to access the power and blessing and gifts of God. And what that is ultimately is a creative mind, the ability to really craft a vision, and then the ability to bring these ideas, these higher ideas, these inspired, grand, beautiful, fantastic ideas and visions to life in the real world. And so that ultimately is tapping into higher streams of consciousness and making your vision a reality.